This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America as we kick off another week. I'm Seth Merrill. Thanks for joining us here. We'll certainly have a good week of discussion because there was a nice weekend of stakes action. We'll talk about the various races as we proceed along, including today. Today on the show, going to touch on one race that I don't want to float under the radar screen. We talked a little bit about it yesterday on Loose on the Lead with Steve Haskin. That's the private terms at Laurel. So in a few minutes, we'll be joined by Frank Vespi. He is the publisher of the RacingBiz.com, the website that covers racing action in the Mid-Atlantic region. He was out at Laurel on Saturday, so we'll get some thoughts from him because Kid Cruz in the private terms, just an incredible performance, and we'll look at that in a few minutes. A little later on, Mike Penham, Horse Racing Radio Network. We'll get some stakes recap action thoughts from him, and then we'll wind things up with Andy Serling, New York Racing Association. We'll get some selections for him for today at Aqueduct, but also of course, as part of the Fox broadcast team. He was out in Southern California on Saturday, and we'll get some thoughts from him on the Big Cap and the other stakes on the card out there as well. Friday, after we went off the air, the 2014 Hall of Fame nominations were announced. The ceremony, of course, in August up in Saratoga, August 8th, in fact, and the actual inductees will be announced on April 25th, but the nominations are out. The nominations include 4 jockeys, 4 thoroughbreds, and 2 trainers. Jockeys Chris Antley, Garrett Gomez, Craig Perrette, and Alex Solis. The thoroughbreds that were announced, Ashado, Curlin, Kona Gold, and Extra Heat, and trainers Steve Asmussen and Gary Jones. The finalists were selected by the Hall of Fame's 16-member nominating committee from a total of 84 candidates. These are now voted on by the Hall of Fame voters as a whole, and each voter may select as many candidates as they believe are worthy. From that, 4 candidates with the highest vote totals are selected, and they will be inducted, again, August 8th. Up in Saratoga. So I think it's a good class of nominations, and we'll know come April 25th who is actually going into the Hall of Fame. But I think there's some good candidates out there for the voters to take a look at. Also, since we were last on the air, top billing off the Derby trail, and it happens every year. Some big candidates, some highly anticipated candidates get a ding or worse and move off the Derby trail. I mean, at this point, I think Shared Belief is already one of those casualties, although it hasn't absolutely been confirmed, but it just seems unlikely Shared Belief will make it. Now Top Billing goes to the sidelines. Had a injury during a workout at Payson Park on Saturday. It looks like the prognosis is good, so hopefully back racing at some point, but definitely the Kentucky Derby is off the schedule at this point. So Top Billing injured off the Derby trail. Shug McGahee now left, of course, with some other nice 3-year-olds, among them Honor Code. Honor Code had a workout this past, yesterday actually, down at Gulfstream, 47.97. And he's doing that in anticipation of a race on Wednesday. Now, Honor Code was being talked about as going over and going in a stake at Oaklawn potentially for the 3-year-old debut, but they've switched things up a little bit, and there's an allowance race, the 8th race on Wednesday at Gulfstream, field of 5. Honor Code is in there for the seasonal debut, mile and a 16th, and again, worked out yesterday and prepped for that. So certainly all eyes on Gulfstream on Wednesday afternoon as Honor Code will be making the 3-year-old debut. From there, it hasn't been set, But now with Top Billing on the sidelines, it looks like Honor Code may head to the Florida Derby in the next start. And Honor Code, points-wise, I think is in a pretty good spot. Doesn't have to win the next race, but maybe just add some points here or there. So Honor Code will be back for the 3-year-old seasonal debut on Wednesday. All right, happy to be joined now by Frank Vespi of theracingbiz.com. We're going to talk a little Laurel Racing from this past weekend. As I said, I didn't want to go too far into the week without bringing up this Private Terms, an incredible performance. Good morning, Frank.
Hey, Seth, how are you?
Very good. And Frank, why don't we get right into it, the Private Terms. We talked a little bit yesterday on my show, Sunday show. Myself and Steve Bick were in here talking to Steve Haskin, and of course he's a guy who closely follows the Derby trail, and we were talking some of the higher profile 3-year-old races, the Tampa Bay Derby, and also out in Southern California, California Chrome, who Steve Haskin was very impressed by. But then we also tossed in this Private Terms. And Frank, while we talk, we're going to watch the entire race here, and I just want to set it up before we get into it. The number 3 Barati was the favorite from Kieran McLaughlin and Darley. And Barati is going to come out of the 3-hole. Have a little bit of trouble early, so folks can watch for that. Number 6 is Joint Custody, the Maryland-based horse that I am really high on. And Joint Custody to 6 will wind up running second. And as they come out of the gate here, keep your eyes on the number 8. And I'll tell folks they'll be able to watch him a little bit early with the wide shot, as he will be way in the back. But down most of the backstretch, you will not be able to watch him because he'll be off the screen. And in fact, Dave Rodman called him 25 lengths behind at one point. And there he is as they went to that wide shot. He's last now, but he'll disappear from the screen, and 25 lengths back. But as they come down the stretch, Frank, this could turn out to be one of the claims of the year. They picked this horse up for $50,000, 2 starts prior to this Saturday start. A nice second place in an allowance up on the Aqueduct inner track last time. Linda Rice ships down for the Private Terms. And again, I'll tell people, well off your screen, you'll begin to pick up Kid Cruz as they hit the far turn. But when the afterburners turn on, Frank, he goes by them like they're standing still.
Yeah, it's a neat story, and it was a really nice effort. I hope that when you were on with Vic yesterday, he remembered that I touted this horse on his show last week. He's the one I picked. So, the blind squirrel and the nut routine, but I did pick one. So, Kid Cruz it's like he's in another race. And if you watch the head on, you can see he's a pole behind everybody. And then when he swings out wide, I talked with Pimentel, the rider, after the race, and he said, I thought we were going to be closer. It just took me a while to get him going. And when he finally did, he comes outside rounding the turn, and he goes out, 5 or 6 wide in the lane. And he kind of follows the Matuzak, the 2-horse, around the turn. And Matuzak ends up coming in 3rd. But when he kicks outside of Matuzak, he does find another gear that nobody else there has. And you mentioned it, it's a neat story. The guys who own this horse, a guy named Steve Brandt, his partner Rick Boylan, they watched his first race where the horse was nowhere. I think he came in 7th of 9. He was beating about 20 lengths, but they really liked him. And so when he showed up for a tag, they went to Linda Rice, and she said, "Yeah, let's grab this horse." So they paid $50,000 for him, and now they're on the Triple Crown Trail with this horse. And they don't seem to think that he's going to be Derby ready, but they seem to think that he might be a Preakness sort of horse, or even more likely maybe a Belmont kind of horse.
Yeah, and again, what a nice claim. And as you say, they really rolled the dice a little bit, too, putting the slip in on this horse in the second career start, because the career debut was kind of a dud on the turf by Lemon Drop Kid. You would have thought would have done well on the turf, but they moved over, went in for a tag in the second career start on the dirt at a mile, won that pretty easily, and that's the race they claimed the horse out of. So a really nice claim, and it's certainly an incredible performance. And again, my buddy Joint Custody, I still like him, runs a good second to what looks like a potential buzzsaw. And I found it interesting coming out of the Tampa Bay Derby win down at Tampa Bay, obviously. Ring weekend for West Point Thoroughbreds. Terry Finley for West Point said they were kind of thinking about going up to the private terms, and then Graham Motion called up and said to Terry, you know what, let's go over to Tampa Bay. I'm wondering if they didn't look at this performance and said, I'm glad we didn't go up to the private terms.
In the right spot. Yeah, this is a race that, it's a $100,000 race. It's not graded. It's, it doesn't have a tremendous amount of cachet, but it has produced a couple of horses who ran second in the Preakness, which is sort of an interesting thing. And yeah, this Kid Cruz he's really moving along. It's kind of neat. The guys who own him, I said Brant and Boylan. Brant has owned horses on and off since the 80s and had never owned a stake winner until Saturday. And he was there, and they were there, and they're super excited and really having a good time with it. So it's kind of a neat story. And this is one of those horses, as you said, you'd have thought he'd run well on the turf, and he didn't. They seem to think that he didn't like the turf. But he's one of those horses, as a lot of 3-year-olds do. He's improving by leaps and bounds, very suddenly right now, which is exactly the right time. And your guy, Joint Custody, I thought he ran great. I thought he ran a really good race. The other horses that were up on, up close to or on the pace early ended up pretty much nowhere. Roman Fire, who led for a half mile, 3/4 of a mile, ended up 5th, and Barati, the favorite, ended up 6th. Joint Custody was the only one of the top 3 to stick around at the end. So I thought he ran a really good race. I don't know. I haven't talked to Jerry Robb, so I'm not sure what their plans are with him. He has stretched out pretty well. I mean, he's clearly not as good as Kid Cruz right now, but it was a good effort. So I'm not sure what's next, but I think they got a lot to be happy about with that horse too.
Yeah, he's now got 8 career starts. 7 of those have been exacta finishes. So I think this is a really nice horse based down there in Maryland. And he's had some races against Open Company and done decently. It was going to be interesting to see what he did on Saturday, because the prior start he had finished second to Extra Sexy Hipster, and certainly wasn't flattered by what Extra Sexy Hipster did in New York, but I think Joint Custody proved he's the real deal, and it will be interesting to see how they continue on with him now. Frank, before we wrap things up, just want to touch on, I read the recap of the race on theracingbiz.com, and kind of towards the end of the article, there was a little info on the trainer's title, which is really coming down to neck and neck towards the end of the meet. Hugh McMahon with 14 wins at the meet. Juan Vasquez 13, also with 13. Kieran McGee, Claudio Gonzalez with 11. Michael Trombetta with 10. So within 4 wins, as we get down to the last few weeks of the meet, there are 5 of them right in there. Flip side is, over on the jockey side, Trevor McCarthy continues to ride very well. He's got a 12 win lead on Victor Carrasco, 40-28 so far at the meet. So on the trainer side, a nice little battle shaping up. On the jockey side, Trevor McCarthy continues to ride very well.
Yeah, I mean, McCarthy has been, it's been a terrific meet for him. And, you figure, if you recall a couple of weeks ago, he won a race when he lost the irons coming out of the gate, never got him back. I mean, if a guy can do that, he's going to win the riding title. I mean, you just can't beat that. And Victor Carrasco, it continues to ride well. He lost the bug at the beginning of the meet, but continues to do really well. So, those 2 guys are clearly doing great, and McCarthy's having a terrific meet. On the trainer side, as you say, there's a whole bunch of guys that are still sniffing around, which is, it's sort of unusual. Usually you have kind of 1 or 2 guys that separate themselves and then everybody else. But here you've got about 5 of them. And so it'll be fun to see how it comes down. I think, like you say, a lot of guys can do it. And it's kind of interesting. It's kind of a mix of guys, There's a couple who claim a bunch of horses, and there's a Mike Trombetta who claims occasionally, but more of his horses are horses they bred or bought at sale. So kind of an interesting mix of guys, and it'll be fun to see. We've got about 3 weeks left in the meet, so it'll be sort of fun to see how it all shakes out.
And I'm noting also number 7 currently on the list as far as wins at the meet, King Leatherberry. And Bick and I yesterday were discussing the Hall of Fame nominations, and Bick tossed in the Great Point. It's a point of consternation with a lot of people, and I agree with it, that King Leatherberry isn't in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you and I have talked about this. King should be in there, and that he's not in the Hall of Fame, to a lot of people's minds, and I have to say to mine, really is a mark against the Hall of Fame. And I think you look at the job he's done with Ben's Cat, who is his best current runner. I mean, this is a horse that, broke his pelvis. He's a terribly bred horse. He's by a failed sire, out of a dam that nobody ever heard of, by a sire that no one remembers. Broke his pelvis as a 2-year-old, didn't get to the races until he was a 4-year-old, and now he's won, over $1 million, umpteen races. And you look at that horse, and to me, you look at a lot of the guys who are in the Hall of Fame, if they had Ben's Cat, he doesn't even get to the races. And King has him, and he's still arguably, one of the top 3 turf sprinters in the country. That's a training job that just a lot of guys can't do. And people need to be looking at this, and people need to put King in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and it was a disappointment that he wasn't even among the nominations this year. But we'll see if we can switch things up. And I noted just what you said. With Ben's Cat, it seemed like his profile had raised a little bit too. So it seemed like maybe he could have been in the mix this year, but it wasn't to be. But I agree with you. That is an omission that certainly has to be addressed, and so we'll keep pushing for that. All right, Frank, as always, we appreciate the visit. Again, we'll tout people if they want to follow racing in the Mid-Atlantic region. No better place to do it than the racingbiz.com. Thanks for the visit. We'll talk to you again.
Many thanks, Seth. Good to talk with you.
You as well. Frank Vespi from theracingbiz.com. We'll take our break. When we come back, it's Mike Penna, Horse Racing Radio Network. A little stakes action review from the weekend. Stay tuned.
I'm Mark Cassano. Join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch. We'll inform, analyze, and welcome in the biggest names in racing. So join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch, right here on the OTB Television Network.
I got it. Watch me. I got it. Hey! I got something that makes me want to shout. I got something that tells me what it's all about. I got a move that tells me what to do. If you don't, brothers and sisters, then you won't know what it's all about.
Here in upstate New York, no one provides bettors with more wagering options than Capital OTB. Our network of branch and easy bet locations stretches from the mid-Hudson Valley all the way to the Canadian border and west to central New York. So whether you need to place a bet, fund your Capital Bets account, or watch the next big race, all the action is just around the corner. A full list of our branch and easy bet locations can be found online at capitalotb.com. Capital OTB, the better and most convenient choice for wagering in upstate New York.
I'm Anthony Mormino. Join me weekdays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the day in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekdays at 9, only on the OTB TV network.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. Happy to be joined now by Mike Penna of the Horse Racing Radio Network. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Seth.
I always like to give folks a chance to learn what was on the live last week, but available via archive on the Horse Racing Radio Network website as well. Who were some of your guests from the past week?
Well, this past week on Trainer Talk, which of course is our Wednesday afternoon feature where we interview trainers to talk about their lives and their backgrounds, had a great visit with trainer Bill Kaplan and with Jose Garofalo, who of course trains the Fountain of Youth winner Wildcat Red, pointing for the Florida Derby. But those two, to hear their stories and their backgrounds, and of course Bill Kaplan, a highly decorated Vietnam veteran as well, and he tells that story in the interview, and just some amazing stuff from those guys. So they were on this past Saturday. Ken Ramsey joined us from Barbados on our Equine Forum show. He, of course, went on and won the Sandy Lane Gold Cup this past Saturday. And Cott Campbell, who had Palace Malice going in the Gulfstream Park Handicap. Always a lot of fun to catch up with him. He's such an unbelievable interview and a great gentleman, great ambassador for the sport. So Cott Campbell, his interview is available on our site as well.
All four of those sound like, I haven't had a chance, but I have to go back and watch. And that's interesting. Ramsey was down in Barbados?
Yeah, he was in Barbados, even though he had Bobby's Kitten running at Tampa Bay, who a lot of people won't realize that he is probably his top Derby prospect, even though that was an allowance race on the turf on Saturday. But he decided to go to Barbados. He said it's the first chance he's had to run a horse in the race. He'd been there a couple of other times, but they were just on cruises, and he always fell in love with the island. He thought it was a great place, and of course that's the biggest race in the Caribbean. And he was just ecstatic to be part of it and to lead his horse into the winner's circle.
Yeah, Sandy Lane Gold Cup, and he shipped down Major Marvel, who was a winner up here at Saratoga this past summer. Also won one of those claiming crown races down in Florida a few weeks back. But he shipped over and won. I think Patrick Husbands was on board as well. And yeah, Ken Ramsey, Global Conquest is the name of his game, I guess.
Yeah, I asked him that. I said, I was wondering what you were going to do for an encore coming off of those 2 Eclipse Awards in 2013. And I said, is it world domination? Is that the next step? And he went on to talk about running in the Gold Cup and running a horse in the Italian Derby, which is going to be coming up. And then he has another horse, I think maybe it's Ascot or one of those races that he's pointing for. So it very well could be world domination for Ken Ramsey this year.
Very good. All right, let's get to some of the stakes action from the past weekend here in the United States. Let's kick things off down at Tampa. As you say, Bobby's Kitten won earlier on the card, but the feature there that everybody focused on, Tampa Bay Derby, $350,000, Grade 2 event. It was a Derby points race, mile and a 16th, and our friends at West Point put together a pretty good 5 minutes winning this race with Ring Weekend, and about 4 minutes later, they won with Toasting over at Gulfstream Park. But we're watching Ring Weekend here in the stretch. A pretty nice performance. And Daniel Centino, very aggressive early in the race, took control of this. I like when jockeys do that, and Ring Weekend just kept going. Number 6, Vince Ramos, winds up running second. Kind of surprising, 9-2, the Pletcher trainee coming off the Sam Davis win. The favorite was Conquest Titan from Mark Casse at 5-2. Maybe a little bit of a disappointment running fourth, but to me that's probably an aberration because some horses just don't quite take to this Tampa Bay surface. And given what Conquest Titan had done previously over at Gulfstream, I think he's a little better than that. I'll give him one more shot. But Ring Weekend now very interesting along the Derby trail.
Yeah, interesting and great to see his human connections as well back in the Derby picture with trainer Graham Motion, and you mentioned Terry Finley and West Point Thoroughbreds. Great people, great ambassadors for the game, and it's super to see them back on the Derby trail with a horse like this. And, you know, when you look at this particular race, that the Ring Weekend took it to him from the start, and the fractions of this race over that racetrack were pretty quick, 23-3 for the opening quarter. They went 46-3 for the half, 111-2 for 6 furlongs, and he ran every step of the way. So he earned this victory. And a son of Tapit, who of course stands at Gainesway down here in Lexington, and a horse that looks like he has all the tools to keep improving, and he's improving quickly, so he could be a factor moving forward.
And I found it really interesting that subsequently they came out and Graham Motion was talking about what's next for this horse, and they're thinking maybe Bluegrass, but one of the races they mentioned, the Calder Derby, which was totally off my radar screen because certainly none of the horses so far, none of the connections have mentioned this, and one of the reasons I think mainly is it doesn't offer any points. But now with 50 points in his pocket, I think Ring Weekend is guaranteed to start, so that Calder Derby becomes an option. And I'm kind of wondering, it's right down there in Florida, I wonder if some of these other horses that maybe have some Derby points already socked away will aim for that race. That could be an interesting little race down there.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. The horses that do have the 50 points to their credit already, or even horses that are kind of knocking on the door with, say, 24 points, that they may want to try to do a little bit more to guarantee themselves a spot, but even that might be enough to get them into the 20-horse field. But certainly a horse like Ring Weekend, who doesn't need any more points to guarantee himself a spot, he has that luxury now of being able to choose a different path and maybe even an unconventional path like that, because he doesn't need the points to get in.
Yeah, it should be fun to see where they do elect to go and how that that Calder Derby shapes up. All right, let's shift our attention now over to the other side of the state on Saturday. The return of Palace Malice. I was talking to Ron Nicoletti on Friday, and I was maybe a little bit against Palace Malice just because this horse last year's a 3-year-old, wins the Belmont Stakes, wins the Jim Dandy. So is this the race he's pointing for? Are they looking for things later in the year? And B, is a one-turn mile going to be his best trip? But as we see the stretch run here, Golden Ticket, the Travers Dead Heat winner from a couple seasons back, is going to wind up taking the lead in the stretch. Golden Ticket is the number 2 horse. Number 3, Uncaptured, I thought I might have jumped off my old buddy too soon, but no, he'll get swallowed up and run 3rd. And Palace Malice comes back nicely here in the stretch on Golden Ticket at the mile distance, and I think that leaves a lot of options now for Todd Pletcher going forward.
Yeah, I think so too, and I couldn't agree with your analysis of this race anymore, because I felt the same way. And even talking to Cott Campbell on Saturday morning, you got the sense that, hey, there's bigger fish to fry up the road, and they're not necessarily targeting this race, but it was a good place to start him back. And even Cott said during the interview that he didn't know if this one-turn mile was going to be his best distance. And I was kind of reading between the lines and thinking, okay, well, if Cott is saying that and we kind of feel that way as well, maybe it's not going to be, and maybe he is vulnerable at what was expected to be a short price. But he showed all kinds of grit, all kinds of determination, and he's a super, super horse, and he's going to be heard from down the road this year in this handicap division, which, by the way, is shaping up to be just absolutely incredible. And I know we're going to talk about the big cap coming up in just a little bit, but I think you can look at Palace Malice and Golden Ticket, who was right there with them, as being players in this division now, because Golden Ticket is a horse that always tries his heart out. He gives you his all every time. And I think you're gonna hear more from Golden Ticket as well. He might pull off a bit of a shocker in one of these big races up the road.
Yeah, I have not been a believer in him, even given that dead heat performance. The dead heaters coming out of that, I don't know, really validated as they went forward. But he's run some nice races. And again, I agree. I think he'll be an interesting player in the handicap division. Speaking of Palace Malice going a mile, Todd Pletcher comes out of the race and says, maybe the Fairgrounds, maybe Oaklawn, maybe we'll look at the Met Mile now that we know we have a horse that can run a mile. And it's going to be interesting, that Met Mile, because now we'll shift our attention out to Southern California and take a little look at the San Carlos, 7 furlongs on the dirt, and the winner will be the defending champion of the Metropolitan Mile, Sierra Sky. Sierra Sky is going to be the number 1 horse, making a very nice late run in here to get up. This horse had been off since the Metropolitan Mile, May until February of this year, ran 5th in that comeback effort, the Palos Verdes. But I think this effort here, and we can see the horse looking for some room, tips out, and now makes this nice stretch run under Joel Rosario. Sierra Sky is back, and that Met Mile might be shaping up to be very, very nice.
Yeah, I think so. And we talked about this race and all the greatest stakes as we do every Friday night on our weekend stakes preview show. And Sahara Sky was my top pick, but if I were going to bet the race at the top of the stretch, I wouldn't have bet Sahara Sky, because he was dead last coming to the quarter pole and didn't really look like at any point he was going to make that run. And then he comes bursting through in the middle of the field. And keep in mind, this was a 10-horse field, so he had a lot of horses to navigate his way through. And he comes bursting through in between horses and right up the gut of the field, and really just showed a lot of courage, a lot of heart. And I love Joel Rosario. I think that he is undoubtedly one of the top riders in the game, and he's back on top of his game after his injuries last summer. And again, to doubt Joel would be a huge mistake. And this was very reminiscent of what we saw in the Metropolitan Handicap last year in May, when he lagged behind. He wasn't quite that far behind at the top of the stretch, but he made the big late run to come run down cross traffic. And Sahara Sky, boy, this seems to be his best distance from 7 furlongs to a mile. And this was a powerful charge through the stretch, and another horse that in this mile division is going to be very tough.
Yeah, that was a really nice race on a weekend filled with nice performances. And now we're going to shift our attention to what was, it's been referred to, we talked about it yesterday on the show, I've also mentioned it today already, a tour de force in the Big Cap Santa Anita Handicap Grade 1 event, $750,000, and going off at 7-2. It's been mentioned. It could be one of the overlays of the decade here on Game On Dude, but understandable, kind of a what have you done for me lately scenario. We're watching the stretch run here, Mike, and Will Take Charge goes a little wide as they come out of the turn, and that lets Game On Dude sprint away even more. Game On Dude, boy, the fractions, 22, 45, 109. I mean, this is, we talked about on the Handicappers Report earlier, fast fractions, but he's kind of out there pretty much on his own. Certainly Mucho Macho Man and Will Take Charge were pressing, but not right up next to the horse. They were up close. And Will Take Charge, that was probably a little bit out of his game, but as I said earlier, I don't take anything away from Luis Saez. Given what happened down in Florida, I think they said, we got to be up fairly close. So at the top of the stretch, we're in the hunt. And I think Will Take Charge has now run into a couple of buzzsaw performances in 2014 that it took to beat him. I think Will Take Charge is an absolutely legitimate member of the handicap division as a 4-year-old, and he'll get his wins. It just took a couple of incredible efforts, and we saw one of those yesterday from Game On Dude.
Yeah, Game On Dude, but is he back or what? This 7-year-old gelding is a horse that so many people, especially in the media, were counting out. I think a lot of horsemen had thought, well, maybe he's lost a step or two, and he's not the same Game On Dude as he was a year ago or 2 years ago, and he showed that he can still get it done on the big stage. Now, I know this is his home track, and he's now won 8 of 11 at Santa Anita, but the way he did it, Seth, you mentioned those fractions, and you used the term tour de force, and I think that's accurate because he just took it to him from the start, and he said, if you want to beat me, come catch me, and they just couldn't do it. And I do think that he took Will Take Charge, and even Mucho Macho Man, not so much out of his game, certainly, because he can race up close, but he kind of forced their hand going up the backstretch and into the far turn, because they had to make that move maybe a bit earlier than they would have liked to come engage him, because he was just cruising along on that uncontested lead. And Mike Smith, he kind of reminded me a bit of Pat Day, the way Pat Day used to let horses come to him coming to the quarter pole, and you would think that they were going to go by him, but he still had horse left. And Mike Smith did that. He allowed them to kind of range up and get a little bit closer. He knew he had plenty of horse underneath him with Game On Dude, and the Hall of Famer let him go, and it was over. And it really was impressive for Game On Dude, and great to see him back on top of the game. He's a great story, of course, with Joe Torre being involved in the ownership. It's great for racing, and Hall of Famer Bob Baffert quietly confident coming into this race, and now you know why.
And again, now we have to reiterate what a handicap division is shaping up to be this year. Will Take Charge, Game On Dude. I think Mucho Macho Man, he's thrown in these kind of races before in his bounce back. I think he's absolutely legitimate. We alluded to it before. Lee, the winner of the Don, I think is interesting. Normandy Invasion on the comeback. You throw that one in there. Palace Malice. This is really shaping up. It's early March, but it is shaping up to be a big year.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. And how about two-time defending Horse of the Year, Wise Dan, who's back in training right here in my backyard at Keeneland. He's been starting back on his trail to the 2014 campaign, and there's some talk that Charlie Lepresti might actually point him toward a couple of dirt races this year, and maybe even a start in the Breeders' Cup Classic. So how cool would that be?
Yeah, this is really shaping up to be a lot of fun, and you throw in the 3-year-old races we saw this weekend. And I think on the 3-year-old filly side as well, we've got a good lead up to the Derby Trail, the Triple Crown Trail. Also on the filly side, you toss in a very, very strong handicap division. It's shaping up to be a very good 2014. And a lot of that action will be covered right on Horse Racing Radio Network, the racing action as well as all the conversation with the folks behind the scenes. You can go to the Horse Racing Radio Network and check out those archives. Mike, as always, we appreciate the visit. We'll talk to you again next week.
54 days, 7 hours, 49 minutes away from the Run for the Roses, Seth. So, yeah, we're getting close. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
All right, I like that. Mike Penna from the Horse Racing Radio Network. We'll take our next break. When we come back, Andy Serling, New York Racing Association and Fox Sports racing analyst. We'll make him wear both of those hats right after this.
The future of online betting is here, and only at the all-new CapitalOTBBet.com. CapitalOTBBet.com delivers a state-of-the-art wagering experience found nowhere else in horse racing. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night School in the Buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
Each morning on the OTB TV network, you get the very best in horse racing programming. Weekdays begin with the Handicappers Report, where professional handicappers share their selections and analysis of the day's racing. Followed by Racing Across America, a daily conversation with racing personalities from around the country. Saturdays include Down the Stretch, where Mark Casano speaks with the biggest names in racing. And Sunday mornings, it's Loose on the Lead, where Steve Bick and I offer news and a unique lineup of weekly guests. All here on the OTB TV network.
Funding your Capital OTB Bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today. Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTB.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTB.com. Log on today.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. We're happy to be joined now by Andy Serling of the New York Racing Association, as well as being a Fox Racing correspondent. And Andy, as I said before the break, we're going to make you wear both hats this morning.
So I'm happy to wear any hat that somebody will let me wear. Thanks, Seth.
Except for that, who's the
Dunce Cap?
Yeah, the rap guy who was at the awards ceremony the other night with that 10-gallon hat that is making the rounds now. I don't know if I don't think that looks good on anybody.
Because of my great love of movies, I can't watch the Academy Awards.
Well, yeah, okay, I get that.
I find them painful.
I understand. I'm a film school graduate myself, so I get it. I watch, but I get it. Andy, we're going to start things out talking a little bit about Aqueduct this afternoon, but then we're going to go off to California and get some of your thoughts on Big Cap Day. But before we do that, I'm assuming weather's fine. It seems like over the weekend things have now moderated and we're getting more towards hopefully springtime temperatures, but also not as much precipitation. So things look okay today down there?
Yeah, I mean there's a couple of small showers in the area this morning, so it'll be clear up by noon. But I don't think any showers will be anything that would have any effect on the track whatsoever.
All right.
Thursday they're expecting some. Winter's coming back Thursday.
Oh, well, yeah, we've got...
God forbid it would get nice out.
We've got that up here as well. Should also mention there's a 28,000 Pick 6 carryover today at Aqueduct. Let's kick things off. Look at a couple for this afternoon. The second race today, Maiden Claimer, $40,000 tags. They're going 6 furlongs. And Andy, when I looked at this race, I thought Nicholson was a little bit interesting on the class relief. And the first-time starter from Michelle Nevin by Giants Causeway, Love's Dreams, was also a little bit interesting to me. Which way did you go?
Well, I mean, I understand that people think that Kisei Moi is the horse to beat, too, and maybe he is, and maybe he'll be the clear speed from the inside. The inside has continued to be good, I think, for the last about week or so of racing. I think starting around day after the Gotham, it's not a huge gold rail, but it's certainly an advantage to be inside. But I'm just not a huge fan of this horse, and I thought it opened up some other horses. And the horse that I'm interested in the most is the one Einstein of Pharaoh. I think is going to be a pretty good price in here, dropping down, very low-profile connections. And I know this is a tough horse to try to get in the winner's circle, but this horse debuted in a very, very tough maiden race, and it was also a maiden race that completely collapsed and melted down. And Einstein of Pharaoh was the speed before stopping a half mile into the race, but I think that performance showed some ability, and thought he was an interesting horse to price turning back in here. So I'm going to try to get him in the number with horses like Kisei Moi, Don't Tell Your Mother, who got bet first time, and Your Horse Nicholson.
All right, and now let's go out and look at the finale today. And I'm just realizing I have to turn about 50 pages in my daily racing form because there's a few tracks in between. But
why do they do that?
I have no idea. We were commenting on that yesterday because they have the other daily racing program, which is also put out by the Racing Forum folks, and they're all in order there. So I can't figure it out. But
it's just.
It is.
I don't know who they think is served by that, but anyway.
It is what it is. The ninth at Aqueduct today, a 12,000 claimer. They're going 6 furlongs. And I thought Schoolyard Dreams was interesting, dropping off the claim. Coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Coulda, shoulda, woulda, scratch.
Oh, okay. So the speed goes there. So now
there's still plenty of speed in here.
Now Schoolyard Dreams, well, his speed scratches, let me put it that way. But on the drop, Schoolyard Dreams with some back class there, probably a little bit interesting to me. What were your thoughts?
Not sure how interesting the favorite is. I'd put Schoolyard Dreams on top. I might actually was thinking of switching my pick to my second choice, and I don't disagree. Schoolyard Dreams is the horse to beat in here. I don't love the claim and the drop down for a horse that had run very well 2 back for 20,000, and then last time didn't run as well. But if he's able to run back to his race on January 5th, he's be very tough in here. And considering the pace, he's a very logical horse. But I'm kind of interested in Festive Spirit because just what is he doing in here, going 6 furlongs? As a plotter going long, though he seemed to really sort of run his best race in a long time last time out. And Rudy Rodriguez has exceptional numbers turning back, especially in the inner track where he's 15 for 50 over the last 5 years with a $3.09 ROI. So he's winning with horses that are 7-2 basically on average. And I thought he was kind of interesting because I do think you have to get some pace. You've got pace from William Thomas, you've got pace from Bear Spirit in here, and you've also I guess they're the main speeds now. I think a lot of speed did come out with coulda, shoulda, woulda, and that might hurt the 6 and kind of help the 1 who should be closer. But I think the 6 is dangerous, and I'm not a huge fan of LOL, though obviously he can win this race.
All right, there are a couple for this afternoon. And again, you were out in Southern California on Saturday as part of the Fox team Jockey Club tour on Fox. They added that big cap to their schedule. We'll get to the big cap in a moment, but before we do that, Andy, just wanted to talk about the San Carlos because you toss in what Palace Malice did in Florida going a mile down there. Sierra Sky, the defending champion of the Met Mile, he's back now with this nice win in the San Carlos. Boy, this is shaping up to be maybe another good Met Mile in New York.
I think it's going to be one of the great Met Miles we've had. I mean, when you think that we moved to Belmonte and increased the purse to $1.25 million, it better be a good race, and I have to imagine it will be. I mean, the handicap division is as exciting right now as it's ever been, and as you said with Palace Malice, who I thought ran exceptionally well in that race. I mean, look where the other speeds in that race finished in general. I know on capture wasn't that far off the pace, and he did finish in the photo, but the way he battled back, he looked to be a hopelessly beat third in mid-stretch, and to come back and win was a real credit to him. And Todd's horses will frequently really run their best races second off a layoff when he's down in Florida, so I think we can expect him to move forward the next time he runs, wherever that should be. That was a good effort. And as far as Sahara Sky, it's great to have him back. They're saying they're going to try the Carter again, where they finished second last year, and obviously want to try to win the bet again. And it was nice because it proved that it wasn't some super speed track. So people can say all they want about Game On Dude winning and saying the track was a speed track or not, because it showed that it was a very fair track and that he came from dead last. You know, he sort of got shuffled a little bit when I thought Mike Smith unwisely took Shake It Up down to the inside. But he got a great ride from Joel Rosario, who managed to never stop riding him forward while running in traffic in the stretch. A very hard thing to do. And I think if you watch that race carefully, it's a great example of why Joel Rosario is one of the best riders in the country.
Yeah, again, it was impressive and sets things up potentially for a nice matchup there with Palace Malice. Pletcher mentioned the Met Mile as being
well. I think everybody's mentioning it.
Yeah. Well, with the money,
a lot of money, and it's a very, very prestigious race. I certainly believe Normandy Invasion's a horse that could be there, and I think a lot of the big names will be looking to be there. It's going to be a great day.
All right, let's shift our attention now to the highlight of the day and what was the focus of that Fox broadcast, the big cap, $750,000 Grade 1. We've already talked about it a couple of times on the program and yesterday as well. Really a tour de force for Game On Dude. He did what he likes to do and has to do. Mike Smith went out and took control of the race. Absolutely legitimate fractions, but he was out there and wasn't really getting pressed hard. I mean, Mucho Macho Man and Will Take Charge were right up there, but Game On Dude was doing doing it well within himself. They turn into this stretch. Will Take Charge floats a little bit, but Game On Dude, wow. I mean, he's back as well. Impressive. And I'm not taking anything away from Will Take Charge. His 2014 2 starts now. He's run into a couple of buzzsaw performances, but man, Game On Dude, really, really impressive.
Well, you do have to feel for Will Take Charge. In almost any other year, he would have won the Darn and the Sandy to Handicap already by now. And he's a remarkable horse. Wayne Lucas has done a tremendous job with him. He shows up with an A effort every time he runs. He's a huge fighter. But Game On Dude was absolutely sensational in this race. He ran a very fast pace. He fought the whole way, and I think he showed, and there should be a lesson to the riders in this game that think that they're going to change evolution and they want to strangle and rate every horse in every race. And the best speed horses, they use their speed as a weapon. And the weapon is they can go fast early and make others have to chase them, play their game, and they can still run fast late. And if you take that speed away and try to rate them, they become completely ineffective. And Game On Dude showed that if he's allowed to roll early, he'll continue to roll late. And it was just an incredible performance, and I felt very lucky to be there. It was really one of those special races that just reminds us of how great this game is. Not that we need a reminder, but it certainly was a great day and a great performance.
Yeah, one of those that lived up to the billing. I mean, they were talking about it being one of the better big caps in quite a while, and it lived up to that. And just before we let you go, I want you to touch a little bit on California Chrome in the San Felipe, because we had Steve Haskin on yesterday talking about some of the 3-year-old races. He was very impressed with California Chrome.
Really, that's shocking. Is he never not impressed?
he thought he was talking about moving California Chrome up to #1 on his list this week.
Well, I think the #1 horse in his list got hurt, so.
Yeah, but California
the
Chrome
embarrassment of Top Billing continuing to perform in the Triple Crown races.
California Chrome was #8, so he's making a pretty good leap up this week. Let's put it that way.
Allen got a 107 buyer and went off by many lengths in a very impressive performance. I don't know that I would consider him the #1 horse for the Derby, but he was really exciting, and he really ran very, very well in that race. I think he surprised people. He broke so sharply, the riders sort of had no choice but to put him on the lead, and it worked out very, very well. He really sort of outbroke the field, which is I think, a tribute to his sharpness. He was extremely impressive in that race. And I think the coolest thing right now is that the horses that ran 1-2 in the Gotham are New York breds, and California Chrome is a cow bred. Just reinforcing the old idea, as Rich Migliore likes to say, a good horse can come from anywhere.
And I know you were out of town on Saturday, so I don't know whether you had a chance to watch it, but did you see Kid Cruz in the private terms?
I bet the race. I saw him. He was a horse off a wide trip against a gold rail, actually. Linda Rice is certainly doing very well, claiming from Bill Mott, having played Palace and Kid Cruz from him, and he looked very good in that race. And all those that didn't heed the warning of not betting Barati because he rode a gold rail to victory took a bad 6 or 8 to 5 on a horse that had not shown that he was good enough.
Yeah, that was an absolutely impressive performance.
Yeah, he was very impressive.
One among many on the weekend.
On her birthday.
Yeah, it was. There you go. It was a very fun weekend. All right, Andy, we'll let you go. We appreciate the thoughts for this afternoon. Good luck, and we'll talk to you again.
Thanks, man.
Andy Serling from the New York Racing Association, again, as well as being a Fox Sports racing analyst. We'll take our last break. When we come back, a little more news and notes right after this.
Funding your Capital OTB bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Here in upstate New York, no one provides bettors with more wagering options than Capital OTB. Our network of branch and easy bet locations stretches from the mid-Hudson Valley all the way to the Canadian border and west to central New York. So whether you need to place a bet, fund your Capital Bets account, or watch the next big race, all the action is just around the corner. A full list of our branch and easy bet locations can be found online at CapitalOTB.com. Capital OTB, the better and most convenient choice for wagering in upstate New York.
Each morning on the OTB TV network, you get the very best in horse racing programming. Weekdays begin with the Handicappers Report, where professional handicappers share their selections and analysis of the day's racing. Followed by Racing Across America, a daily conversation with racing personalities from around the country. Saturdays include Down the Stretch, where Mark Cassano speaks with the biggest names in racing. And Sunday mornings, it's Loose on the Lead, where Steve Bick and I offer news and a unique lineup of weekly guests. All here on the OTB TV network.
Wagering at CapitalOTBBet.com is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Capital Bet TV, the fastest and easiest online wagering experience where you can monitor 5 different tracks simultaneously. 2. Capital Bet Express. Its straightforward program layout and interactive handicapping information lets you build your wager quickly and efficiently. And 3. Capital Bet Pro, designed especially for the professional horse player. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on this Monday morning. Seth Merrill, thanks for joining us. We'll just wrap things up in this last segment with a little more news and notes from the past few days, the weekend. California Chrome Ring Weekend, both 3-year-old winners in Derby points races. And I should give you a little update on the leaderboard now. Some of these horses clearly are in. Given last year, it took, I think it was 10 or 14 points to get in. There's no telling. That was the first year. That may change up, but you still have to think Sam Rott was 60 points on the top of the list. He's in. Intense Holiday, 53. Wildcat Red with 50. And this weekend, we added a couple of more 50-pointers. Ring Weekend and California Chrome, both with 50 points. Midnight Hawk, after the second place finish out in Southern California on Saturday, now with 32 points. Albano and Uncle Si both with 24, Tapiture with 22, and Vince Ramos with 20. Those are your top 10, but also with 20, Vickers in Trouble and General A-Rod. So certainly the top of that list, you have to think they're probably safe at this point, and will make their way in. Kentucky Journey, the Courier Journal Kentucky Derby Media Poll, Louisville Courier Journal that is, each week, each Sunday, they come out with their updated Derby poll, and there are 3 new additions to their top 10 this week. California Chrome, off of that nice win out in Southern California on Saturday, bounces into the list at number 6. In Trouble enters the top 10 at number 9, and Uncle Si at number 10. Now, of course, In Trouble and Uncle Si did not race this week. How'd they bump into the top 10? Well, the horses that bumped out, Top Billing, Bayern, and Conquest Titan. Top Billing off the Derby trail. Bayern with a little ding. I guess folks are a little bit concerned about him. And Conquest Titan off the 4th place finish in the Tampa Bay Derby moves down. And I'm just looking, what did they do with Conquest? Boy, he took a pretty good dip. He's got to be out of the top 20. I'm just looking. They have their top 10 listed in order, and then others that received votes who are in order of, but without being numerically placed. But I'm just kind of looking and guesstimating. Conquest Titan took a pretty good drop this week. Bayern, on the other hand, 1, 2, 3. Bayern maybe about 19 or 20 at this point. But again, California Chrome jumps up to number 6, and it seems like there is some buzz now building off of that performance on Saturday. But going back to the horses coming out of those 2 wins, California Chrome, Art Sherman showed up at Los Al in Southern California, where his string is based on Sunday morning. Came in early, checked the legs of California Chrome. They were nice and cold. He ate up everything. He's alert. He wants to bite you. So it looks like California Chrome came out of the race in fine order. Art Sherman is now looking at the Santa Anita Derby on April 5th, or perhaps training up to the Kentucky Derby. That certainly, we're talking about a layoff of about 8 weeks. That to me seems awful long, but 21st century training, it's a little different. Art Sherman says he'll let the horse dictate. If he needs another race, he'll try it. But Santa Anita Derby potentially on the resume, may train up to things. On the other hand, Ring Weekend, mentioned this earlier. This is kind of interesting. Graham Motion is looking at the Calder Derby, 1 1/8 on the dirt, $250,000, or and that's April 5th, or the Bluegrass Stakes a week later, April 12th, obviously on the Poly track up there. That's a grade 1. The Calder Derby ungraded, no points there. But again, given the points that Ring Weekend put in his pocket this past weekend, you have to think he's certain for the Kentucky Derby. So that Calder Derby trail might be kind of interesting. They could stay based down there in Florida, ship across town, and try the Calder Derby. Very, very interesting. Ring weekend, Graham Motion said, we thought last year he was one of our best 2-year-olds, which is why we took him to Saratoga, but he was disappointing. That's why we gelded him, and it's made a huge difference. So ring weekend now on the Derby Trail for the folks at West Point. And as I noted earlier, it was a nice 5-minute span for the folks at West Point as they win the Tampa Bay Derby with ring weekend, and literally going off across state about 4 minutes later, toasting wins over there. Nice little allowance event at Gulfstream. Ria Antonia has breezed out in Southern California for Bob Baffert in anticipation of a start in the Santa Anita Oaks on April 5th. Breezed in 47 seconds on Saturday. Baffert tweeted out that liked the work, and things are, all systems go for Ria Antonio now in the Bob Baffert barn out there in Southern California. Do want to remind you, and I have it somewhere here in my notes, but tomorrow is, we talked about it obviously last week with Sean Clancy. Tomorrow, here it is, the entries for the Arkle, which is the Cheltenham Festival, kicks off tomorrow over in England. Talked about it again last week with Sean Clancy. Really Super Bowl of steeplechase racing, and really a highlight of the European racing calendar. They have a couple of different seasons. They have a flat season and a jump season. The jump season goes in the winter months, and this kind of is a punctuation on that jump season. 4 days of the Cheltenham Festival. Big crowds, enthusiastic, and Clancy has a runner in tomorrow's Arkle, which will go off 2:05 local time over in England. That's about 10:05 our time, if I have the time conversion right. But Sean Clancy with Valdez tomorrow in the Arkle over there in the Cheltenham Festival. So a little rooting interest for us at Cheltenham this year. Valdez goes out for Sean Clancy and his River D stable. Also, we mentioned it earlier on the show that Ken Ramsey wins this weekend over in Barbados. The Sandy Lane Gold Cup was ridden by Patrick Husbands. 8-year-old Major Marvel. It was a $200,000 race, and it's a big race down there in the Caribbean every year. It seems like 1 or 2 horses will come over from the United States, and they're typically kind of second or third level stakes performers, and sometimes they do well and sometimes not. But as I say, we're not sending over the best of the best just because of the level of race this is. But our second or third level will tend to be pretty competitive over there in this race year in and year out. Ken Ramsey ships over Major Marvel, who back on August 2nd won a starter optional claimer right up here in Saratoga last summer. Back in December, won one of those claiming crown races down at Gulfstream Park. Most recently had run second in a starter optional claimer at Gulfstream. That was back on January 2nd, but ships over to Barbados on Saturday and wins the Shady Lane Barbados Gold Cup at Savannah Garrison Racecourse in Barbados. So Ken Ramsey, world domination. That's what it's all about for Ken. He wins over in Barbados on the weekend. All right, we'll wrap things up for this edition of Racing Across America. Just do want to note some of the events coming up here at the Clubhouse Racebook, online at the branches this afternoon. There is yet again a $100 knockout challenge here at the Clubhouse Racebook. That's going on all month long on Mondays, focused on Aqueduct Racing. $100 knockout challenge at the Clubhouse Racebook. Fan Appreciation Day on Friday at the New Lebanon branch. The next couple of Saturdays, the 15th and the 22nd, there will be a Showviver contest online, capitalotb.com. Coming up on March 20th and the 21st, it's Mega March Madness. That'll actually continue into that Saturday as well. The 20th and the 22nd, Big Wheel Madness. You get to spin the prize wheel. First 100 patrons come in. Of that group, there will be some randomly selected to spin the prize wheel and have a chance to win. Friday, March 21st, again, Mega Madness, Mega March Madness, and that is, of course, keyed to the first couple of rounds of the NCAA tournament. Come down here, watch it on our big screens at the Clubhouse Racebook. But also Friday the 21st, a $500 happy hour bankroll with our buddy Dick Powell. That's coming up. A live syndicate on the 29th, Florida Derby Day. That's also Dubai Derby Day, and more fan appreciation towards the end of the month on the 28th at the Bellevue branch. So all of that coming up here. Again, either at 711 Central Avenue in Albany at the Clubhouse Racebook, on the website, or out at the various branches. You can find more about the promotions and events at capitalotb.com. Going to wrap things up for Racing Across America for this Monday morning. I'm Seth Merrill. We're here every Monday through Friday from 10 until 11 a.m. 9 a.m. is the Handicappers Report. This morning it was Anthony Mormino, myself. Hopefully we gave you some good ideas. Enjoy the races. Cash some tickets. We'll see you tomorrow morning.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting.